Hi everyone, this is for chapter 20. Just want to go into a little depth with you with binary form one more time so that we understand how it works. Now today it's snowy and slushy outside, and if you hear any funny swishing noises in the background, those are the cars going up and down my street through the wet road. So see if you can ignore that noise. It's kind of driving me crazy, but I will try to ignore it as well. Here we go. You've seen these two charts at the end of the chapter. I want to emphasize what they mean. There is both a melodic and also a harmonic component in identifying these types of binary forms, the three that we've talked about. So the bigger form on the top, where it says summary of binary forms, this is the chart that shows how the melodies work. So it shows the melodic component. Sometimes we call that the melodic structure or the thematic design because you're talking about musical themes here. So if you look at the top one where it says summary of binary forms, if you have what we call a simple binary form, you're talking about the two halves of the binary form, the first part and the second part. And oh, look, if the melodies are different, we'll call the first melody in section 1A, and in the second section we'll call it B. So that's all simple means that the melodies are different for the first section versus the second section. That's all it means. Now the second chart is called rounded. We've all heard in English the term what goes around comes around. It's referring again to the melody. So in the first section we'll call the melody A, and then after the repeats with the double bar there, it says DIG period, and WTH is what the heck is this? I didn't want to say the other one, of course. So the digression is what DIG stands for, is digression. It digresses away from the melody, basically. It goes away from it. So that's why you get the feeling of what the heck is this here? But eventually it cadences on a half cadence, and then part of the melody, which we'll just call A prime because it's not the entire exact replication of the A section melody, but it comes back and yay, it's something familiar. So it rounds out the entire binary form with something familiar. Rounded binary is probably the most common of the three types of binary forms that we are discussing. The last one is called balanced, and this is where you've got your A section again and your second section. Actually, we're not labeling them A prime or AB in this case, but you can see there are two sections to the first part of the binary form and the second part, and with a boxed area at the end. Now, since we don't know what the harmony is doing in the box, if it's going to cadence in the home key in the middle, that important middle cadence or not, we don't know. But if a portion of the melody that occurs in the first section of the binary form comes back at the end, it doesn't have to be an exact replication, especially if it cadenced, say, in the dominant in the first half. So all the box is telling you is that some of the ending melodic materials from the first half come back at the end. Sometimes just fragments of them, and sometimes in a different key because you need to end the piece in the home key. So often the box from the first half is transposed into the home key at the second half. It's not an exact replication most of the time. It's just little fragments or part of the materials. And that's called balanced when the melody does that. Okay, so simple means the two halves of binary form, the melodies are different. Rounded means the melody in the first half, which we'll call A, comes back at the very end of the second section, but there's a place called a digression that happens first, and the digression has to end in a half cadence so that the return of portion of A will sound like it's starting over again in a familiar place. And balanced means some of the materials, melodic materials, at the end of the first half come back morphed into the home key in the second half. Now let's talk about the harmony. The little chart at the bottom shows the harmonic component of the binary forms. And there's one place that you need to look at, and I have circled it in this green with red rings around it. You need to look at that interior cadence. This one's a lot easier to memorize, the harmonic component. A binary form is sectional if that interior cadence ends on the tonic key. But the binary form is continuous if that interior cadence does not end in the tonic of the home key. In other words, a sectional binary form, if the interior cadence ends on a tonic, it sounds like it's a complete ending point there. with the second half of the binary form just starting a new section. And it's easy to hear that. But if the interior cadence does not cadence on the tonic, we call it continuous because it doesn't sound final there. It sounds like you need to have the second half of the binary form to make it complete, where it does end on the tonic at the end. So that's a little easy to memorize, the sectional versus the continuous as far as the harmony goes. Now you need to memorize this chart. Memorize it really well. Carry it with you, paste it on your bathroom mirror when you're getting ready for school or work in the morning, and just look at this carefully and think about what it means. I've tried to explain it the best I can in the red letters there for you. Now we're going to play a game called What Is This? And I've got a bunch of binary pieces here that we're going to analyze together. So the first one is by Mozart, K2. He was probably all of like 5 years old when he wrote this. He was a homeschooled child and his father was his teacher. And so I'm sure he had a lot of one-on-one help from his dad in writing this. Nevertheless, it's a very good piece for a 5-year-old. So I'm going to play it for you. I'm going to play softly because when I play at a normal volume, it distorts really badly in the recording because my iPad is sitting right on top of the, right near where the strings are. So I'm going to play a little softly and hopefully it won't distort and be so loud in your ears. This piece goes like this. 1, 2, 3. All right, now that you've heard the piece, let us count the number of bars in each section. So you're looking, I put with a black arrow, you're looking for that interior cadence point marked by the double bar, and also another arrow at the end is the other important cadence point. So we're in the key of F, bars 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's a half cadence, right? Repeated would make it 16 bars there. Let's keep going and count these bars off. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So now I counted 2 sets of 8 bars in the second half, which means that this is a symmetric form because the first half is 8 bars repeated. The second half is not repeated. Okay, so that gives us a little symmetry. Now let's go to the next slide. I've written in the chords. I like how this little 5-year-old was learning about suspensions, preparation, suspension, resolution. Those kinds of things added a lot of interest to it, but we see that here's 5-7 and an implied 6-4 to 5-3 in a 5 chord. That's a half cadence. Now, this part is really drifting harmonically, so I called it a digression. We just had a PAC in G minor and a PAC in F major. That is our home key, so this is a little puzzling. Is this a rounded binary A rounded binary is supposed to end at that point right there with a half cadence, but this one ended with a PAC. So let's see what we're doing to finish it out. A little deceptive cadence there on this minor 6 chord, and then the real finish. These last 4 bars are actually identical with bars 1 to 4. That doesn't really fit our rounded binary category either. This is a kind of a trick question to get us started off here. Laitz only talks about 3 kinds of binary forms: simple, rounded, and balanced. But some of the other textbooks say there's a 4th kind called bounded. It's a combination between the principles of rounded and balanced. I think that's what we're looking at here. This is a bounded because it's got elements of rounded binary, but it doesn't take the end of the first section and bring it back. It takes bars 1 to 4 and brings it back at the very end. So for that reason, it's not quite rounded. It's more balanced. It's got elements of both. So the melody is bounded. The harmony is continuous because in bar 8, it did not end with a PAC in the home key, and the form is binary. Now I promise that I will not give you a bounded example on the final exam, but I wanted you to see one because Laitz mentions in the textbook that the 3 kinds of binary forms he outlines, there's a lot of gray areas in them, and so you kind of have to figure out what principles are at play here melodically and harmonically and give it your best shot. Let's look at one that's not so tricky. Here's one, also by Little Mozart. This is his 6th composition. It goes like this. 1, 2, 3. Okay, now I've written out some harmonic analysis for you just to kind of see where it's going. And we've starting in C major to the 1 to the 5, back to a 1. Now bar 5 has an accidental in it. When you see an accidental, it often signals that you are modulating to cadence in a different key. And that's exactly what happens here. That's the 5 of G and the 1 chord of G with the decoration in the melody. Okay, so cadence on a PAC, but in G major, not in C major. So right then, ask yourself, with that interior cadence, is this a sectional binary or a continuous? Look at the chart right now. Does that cadence end on the tonic in the home key or not? That is the question. Okay, now let's go into bar 9. Now, is this a digression or not? Somehow this part right here melodically sounds familiar. Are bars 5 to 8 similar to bars 13 to 16? Here's bar 5. Okay, that was all in G major. Now listen to bar 13. If I add the little ornament on the last note, they would be not just similar, but identical. So yes, they are similar. The difference is bar 8 cadences on a PAC in G major, whereas bar 16 cadences on a PAC in C major. So now, think about what you want to call this. You can stop the recording if you need to. See if you can figure it out. Here's the answer key. I called it balanced for the melody because bars 5 to 8 and 13 to 16 are very similar. They're just not in the same key. So that's your balance. The box of the rectangular box in the balanced comes back at the end, but in a different key. It comes back at the end in the home key. The harmony is continuous because the cadence in bar 8 did not cadence on a PAC in the home key. So it didn't sound finished, didn't sound sectional, couldn't stand on its own. It would sound unfinished until the song completely cadenced on the one, a PAC in the home key at the very end. So it's a balance for the melody, continuous for the harmony, and it's binary for the form. Balance, continuous, binary. Let's try another one. This one is by one of those unknown Baroque composers named Johann Krieger. It goes like this. 1, 2, 3. You to figure out what you think this is now on your own. So you're looking for what key is it in? What kind of a cadence does it do in bar 8? That will tell you whether it's a sectional or a continuous binary by that cadence in bar 8. You're looking for the melody in the first half to see if it's similar to what comes in the second half. Now you can stop the recording right here while you do this analysis, and then turn the recording on again when you're ready to see the answer on the next slide. Okay, so I've marked the small case A in parentheses over bar 1, and I was looking for it to come back after the double bar in bar 9, and I found that it returned in bar 17. So I put A prime right there. Okay, so I also saw that the cadence point at bar 8 was a PAC in the home key. So therefore, that first section could stand alone. So it's sectional. It's going to be a sectional binary form, not a continuous. But then something happens when we get to bar 9 with the melody. That's something new. Both harmonically and melodically. Now I know that in the diagram of the rounded binary, it says it's supposed to cadence right there as a half cadence. This one did not do that. It cadenced on the 1 of the relative major, a perfect authentic cadence in C major there. So it doesn't quite fit the rounded binary form that Laitz has put in the chart. However, in all the other ways, it does fit it. So I'm going to call it rounded sectional binary. And remember, Laitz gave the caveat that not all binary forms follow these charts exactly, and this is an example of that. This is rounded because now the first theme comes back in bar 17, just like it was in the beginning. So that's rounded binary. Rounded for the melody, sectional for the harmony based upon the cadence in bar 8 at the double bar, and binary for the form. All right, here's one by Telemon. Let's look at this one. Take a listen. 1, 2, 3. Repeat. Stop the recording right here. Figure it out on your own. And when you've got it figured out, turn the recording back on and go to the next slide. All right, let's take a look at this one together. We're in G major on the 1 chord. That was a nice IAC in the middle. Here's a PAC repeated. So the cadence in bars 8A, first ending, and 8B, the second ending, both on PACs. Therefore, this is a sectional binary by the harmony. Now let's go on and see what happens in the middle. Oh, some new stuff in a new key, a dominant D major. Okay, we just did a perfect authentic cadence in D, and you notice I put some railroad tracks right there. That definitely was a clear digression section. It followed the chart exactly. There's a half cadence and the railroad tracks right here. Now in bar 17, this is kind of new stuff in here. But these last 4 bars are identical to bars 5 through 8, which kind of gives it a balanced kind of a feel. But we're going to call it rounded binary because the end of the first part of this binary form, the last 4 bars, are identical to the last 4 bars of the second section of it. Okay, so this is a rounded sectional binary. I put balanced under the second ending at the bottom because it gave it a balanced feel, but I think we're going to call it rounded binary instead because it is identical. It would be balanced if bars 5 through 8 were the same melodic materials just transposed into a different key. But in this case, they're both identical, therefore it is rounded. Let's do another one. This is by Georg Christoph Wagenseil. I don't know who that is, but he wrote a lot of teaching pieces of this level. All of these pieces are very easy to play. They would have been for beginning students, early intermediate students. And although they sound very classical and very dated to our ears, keep in mind the minuet was a pop dance back in that time, so they were learning pop songs of their day. So let's take a listen to this one. 1, 2, 3. Count up your number of bars of the first half. Count up your number of bars in the second half. Look at the interior cadence. That would be bar 8 at the double bar. Look at the melodic structures. See if you can figure this one out on your own. So go ahead and stop the recording now. When you're finished with your answer, then move to the next slide. This piece is really unusual, and I'm going to argue it 2 different ways. First one I'm going to argue for is rounded sectional binary. So I've called, in that case, the melody for the first part, small case A in parentheses. Because it's not the same as letter B, which starts at bar 9. So I called small case A, small case B there. But the B actually, if we're arguing for rounded binary, could be the digression instead. And that's probably the more accurate way to do it if you're arguing that this is rounded binary. So instead of putting the small case B in red, I would have written digression for those 4 bars. Now, in bar 12, this bar right here, it did not cadence. So that doesn't quite fit with the rounded binary format that Laitz has outlined in the charts. It's supposed to have cadence, and then with the railroad tracks, the harmony restarts. Now the harmony does restart here. So you could call it a rounded sectional binary if you're arguing from the melodic aspects of it. Now there's another thing you could call this. You could call this one balanced sectional binary. It's going to stay sectional no matter what, because the cadence in bar 8 was a PAC. But you could call this sectional, in which case you would call the melody A in parentheses for the first part and B in the second half of the binary form at bar 9. And then you would just say, because bar 5 to 8 is identical with bars 13 to 16, this is going to be balanced sectional binary. So this is a gray area. You could argue either way to me on your exam if you should encounter this, and I would take that into consideration, but you have to explain why you called it rounded sectional binary or why you called it balanced sectional binary. If you make your argument and it makes sense, then I'll take it. All right, one more. German Dance by Haydn. 1, 2, 3. You've often said how pop music nowadays, some of the stuff on the radio is so harmonically simple it only uses 2 or 3 chords. Well, it looks like things haven't changed very much over the past 300 years or so, because this piece doesn't change much either. It just alternates between 1 and 5. Okay, so figure this one out on your own. When you're ready, then you can fast forward the slide to see the answer. Okay, let's take a look at this one together and see if you agree with the answers that I got. Of all the ones we've done today, this one is definitely the easiest. Okay, let's take a look at this one together. Hopefully you came up with the same answers that I did. This one is the most clear-cut and easy of all the different types we've talked about today. So hopefully you will agree and our answers will match. So I've called the melody for the first part, small case A. There's no harmony anywhere. It's implied, the 1 and 5 chords, and it's implied that it cadences in the home key on a 1 chord in bar 8. Okay, now the melody in bar 9 is different, so I call it small case B. Another PAC in the home key of E major there at the end. The harmony is very simple. The first section is sectional because of the cadence in the PAC in the home key. There are 2 different melodic parts, so this is simple for the melody, sectional for the harmony, and binary for the form. Simple, sectional, binary. Now, I will post a PDF of a few other ones for you to work on your own that do not have the answers. If you would like to do that, and then contact me by email or whatever and ask me, did I do these right? I'll send you some feedback and let you know if yes you did or no you didn't, if you're interested in that. On the final exam, I will give you some examples of pieces like this, short little binary pieces, and you have to tell me what kind of a binary is it. Then on the final exam, you will of course also have analysis of periodic structure and finding sentences on the period structure and all this kind of stuff. So that's what the final exam will be like. So if you diligently study chapters 15 to know those 8 types of periodic structures, take a look at chapter 16. That's where the asymmetrical periods and the sentences are introduced in there. And then chapter 20 with the 3 types of binary forms and just look at all the study guides I've prepared for you, then I think you'll be okay on the final exam and you should do very well. I always say good luck and have fun, but this is more like a game. This is fun. And I know this year hasn't been ideal in some ways, but in other ways, an online format has worked out splendidly well. Several of you have told me that. And so I'm getting used to this format myself, and I think it does have some pros and some cons, but so does live teaching as well. So I'm glad that we could enjoy this time together. The only thing I really miss is getting to know each of you individually. We don't have that component to the class, but it's a worldwide pandemic, so we did what we had to do to keep everyone safe. It's been a great pleasure working with each and every one of you. Hopefully, when we go back to live classes in the fall for the most part, we will be able to run into each other in the hall and become acquainted for real. But I'm glad for the time we had. I'm glad to have been your instructor, and I wish each of you the best of luck on the final exam and then a much well-earned, relaxing, and joyful summer vacation.